Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Game of Thrones Winter's Coming. Today we have a Commander update video, which has been some time since we've done that. It's going to be a little bit different than we're used to, but I'm trying to get the best possible usefulness out of it. But today's focus is going to be around Annie, as you can see here. And Annie has some quite interesting things going for her. First of all, if you're looking at her guard skills, you can see that she has an active skill that basically adds 150 might, 7000 defense, and 1300 attack to allies within a particular area for 9 seconds. That already indicates that she's a supportive type of commander rather than a defensive or a attacking type, which you can also see here. It says support down here. It indicates that the health, defense, and attack is roughly balanced. So that's at least something you have going for her. She also has the ability in PvP and rival leaders to increase the strategy of all allies for 15 seconds at the start of the battle. She also has the ability to add 7000 defense extra and 150 strategy for 6 seconds, which triggers every 15 seconds. And then she has more strategy addition to all allies, and strategy is basically reflecting the the effectiveness of skills. So keep that in mind when you're using her. But we're going to take a look at her other perks in other situations. You can see here with the rebel leaders at least that I've placed Annie in the back row in the middle. The main reasoning for that is because she is a supportive type. She doesn't have the ability to stand in the front to actually tank up the damage for that long, even though she counters the rebel leader. And her usefulness comes when she uses her active skill, which you can see that she's doing right now. The active skill basically increases the attack, the attack and defense around, like we said before in the introduction of her. And by placing her in the back middle row, it allows the skill to actually be applied to all around her. Rather, if you put her down in the bottom or down at the top, you basically only have the 3 units around her that gets the buff, rather than actually having the entire team getting the buff, which makes her somewhat useful in some situations for rival leaders at least. Her only downside is that she doesn't heal, so you have to be confident that the tank that is in front can actually tank up the damage, and otherwise she's actually pretty decent. Worst case scenario, you can use her as a tank, I think, but some people would probably say they would prefer Julian over Annie instead because of his defense breaking skills. But overall, she's a decent commander for rival leaders and a good supportive commander in that regard. For training grounds, it's basically a similar situation. You will place her in the back middle to actually try and get benefits of her skills and abilities. And the difference between training ground and rebel leaders is that training grounds are a lot faster, so it's much more difficult to actually get the skills to actually activate before it becomes time for it. But either way, if you put up the correct formation, you can use her as a supportive booster in the back, and you can also use her as a damage dealer if you can counter the front line as well. But you want to place her in the back because she's too frail for training grounds at least. And her skills as well has to be applied to as many as possible, and of course you use her as well for the strategy boost that she gives to all the allies and defensive stats, so keep that in mind when you're using her in training grounds. Now we're taking a look at her usability as a commander in terms of attacking, defending, and so on. Annie is focused around spear and total stats. You can see that her specialization is spearman health, total attack, and total defense, which makes her quite usable in terms of spear frontlining with tri formations, for example, mainly because that she basically boosts her frontline with 2 stats and also gives the entire army a total attack boost, so that's really usable in terms of her skill set. Regarding her awakening, you can see that her awakening skill, Hurricane of Wisdom, basically is an active skill that triggers, which wipes out 3% of the target's currently deployed troops, and of course the 3% can't exceed the 3% of Annie's currently deployed troops, which basically means that it's something that can be rather useful in certain setups where you can activate your skills several times faster, because I will basically just remove the enemy army bit by bit rather than actually having to kill them with your troops slowly. Of course, there's also the ability effect, where you can see that Annie is focused around total stats entirely, which is something that's really great for try setup. It allows you to have some flexibility in terms of when you're using her, that it doesn't necessarily have to be spear that has to be frontlining. Of course, to actually get the full maximum value out of her, you will want to have spear in the front line, but she can be used also just in general to try setups because of the rather big amounts of total stats that she gets. Furthermore, you also have to remember that once she gets the 3-star awakened, she will get a boost to all the stats, which applies to also the total stats as well, so it will give him even more power. And then of course, the general idea for lineup recommendations, you can see that there are 2 lineup recommendations. The bottom one is fairly simple. It's a pure spear for lineup, and in general would probably say it's decent, good, it works. It has certain things going for it. If you just want to kill some calves, then this is probably the best way to go around about it. But then there's the other lineup, which is the Cav Spear recommendations. And the thing about this lineup is that it relies on the commander skill damage or active skills rather than actually the commander troop buffs that they are applied. And this entire lineup basically works better, a lot better, if you have Layla Awakened, because her awakening skills allows other female commanders' awakening skills to trigger more than once. There's a chance for it at least. And with that kind of lineup, you can basically see how it's going with Annie. You can basically maybe trigger it once or twice, maybe even 3 times, except for just 1 time usually. And that basically means that you can wipe out 6 or 9% of the enemy troop formation rather than only 3%. So that's at least something like recommended troop lineups that you can use here. So to finish up the video, we are taking a quick look at the Tavern Stats for Annie, and you can see that her Tavern Stats are focused around finance, aptitude and combat rate, which is okay, it's decent. The good thing about aptitude is that it gives you speed ups, and these speed ups you can basically use to either progress in research or in buildings, or maybe even heal your troops or train troops, since they're universal speed ups, which is quite valuable. And combat rate is always nice because it allows you to give that extra boost and potentially get 50% extra damage or damage totals against others if the combat rate is 2k higher than theirs, basically. So people would probably want to try and push combat rate pretty high if they are very heavily focused around PvP, and some others might try and focus around the aptitude instead, because of the speeds that she gives, and that's basically a good indicator of how she works as a commander. She's a pretty versatile commander. She works in almost everything in some way or fashion. She's supportive as well. So I wouldn't say she's terrible or anything. She's pretty decent and can be super strong in certain conditions. And if you're playing around her and using her correctly, at least. But this was kind of this new commander setup video, if you could say like that. Hope you liked the video. Like and comment if you want to. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you want to play the game, there's going to be a link down in the description below, and there's also going to be a link in the description below for the Game of Thrones when it's coming Discord group. And lastly, there's also going to be a link for the music that I'm using in this video, where you can find it. And he's a pretty chill guy. He usually allows people to use his music. So yeah, and yeah, then I wish you all a happy new year. Hope you had a great year, and hopefully we'll have a great year next year as well. And that's going to be all for me today. Take care. Bye bye.